Hello and welcome to the Bold Leadership Story Show, where we talk about the experiences shaping exceptional lives. And today I'm super excited because I have Mr. William E. Preston with me. I've known William since high school and we've kept in touch. I've kind of followed his career on LinkedIn and other places. And every time I look at him every few years over the, 45 plus years, I don't want to it's
Wow.
like scary. But every time I look at his profile, it's like he's taken on something bigger and bigger and bigger. And it's just a real honor of the leadership positions that Bill has taken on and done really well with is admirable. And so I'm just blessed today to have him on the show to have a conversation about leadership. And so with that, Bill, welcome to the show. Thank you for coming and joining me today.
Thank you, Jim, and I'm still just plain Bill, I really am flattered that you asked me, and kind of anxious to see what you got in mind today.
Well, let me embarrass you a little bit here. I want to read a little bit about your background. So Bill is president and chief executive officer of the KP Shaw LLC company. And that Shaw was just added where in January.
It was, and actually something I kind of engineered myself. We were acquired by a company called the Shaw Group.
Okay.
We are,
So that was a really good thing then.
It was something I worked really hard on, actually. We had a private owner for the first 8 years I was with this company, Jim, and he was a great owner for many years. Doing this acquisition was something that we really wanted to do, and it was not easy, but we pulled it off, as you say, in January. So,
Well, congratulations.
thanks.
It's like,
We are KP Shaw. You're right. Legally, we still go by KP Engineering in our day-to-day work, but our legal name is KP Shaw, as you said. So,
okay. All right, cool. So, and KP Shaw is a leading engineering, procurement, and construction, or EPC, in your vernacular, correct? Is it's a EPC business, and you're headquartered in Tyler, Texas, and you have additional offices in Houston, and so you're a Texas-based all company.
there you go. There you go. We've actually, it's an interesting story itself. I'd much rather talk about our company than me, Jim, but we have a background in, as you say, in refining and chemicals, but that work has really quieted down the last several years, and we've made almost a complete transition to renewables, renewable fuel, renewable hydrogen, renewable natural gas, and we have a couple of renewable gasoline projects, and a lot of those products are intended to go to California. So we're more in your backyard than you know. So
Oh, well, that's exciting. I guess that's great. So in the it says let's see, your company's technical and execution expertise, attractive end markets, and strong long-term customer relationships has led the business to consistently achieve significant organic growth profitably. So that's always good. I've dabbled in marketing, and that can get really pricey.
absolutely.
So, and it's always best to have customers that advocate for you and refer you, and you must be doing a really good job.
Well, that's an interesting one, Jim. We were just talking about that this morning. I have my sales meeting every morning, Monday morning, and we're bringing on some new salespeople and have to kind of tell them who we are, right? So they can tell the customers. And I was always taught in my growing up that you want to establish about 2/3 of your business being repeat business and about a third being, new folks coming in.
Sure. And you've always got churn, right? So there's always companies that fall out of that, hopefully fewer than you're bringing on.
Right. But it has nothing to do with me, but I'll say with our company, the last 8 years I've been here, we are hitting at about 90% of companies that work with us once, about 90% of the time do something else with us. So that's what we want, and that's we want to be the smartest guys around, and we want to be the easiest to work with. So those are our two big goals.
So as a leader in that market, which is a huge market, you started your career with, I believe it was Texaco, right?
I did, yeah.
And you worked, what was the progression for you, and what were some of the experiences you had back at that time?
That's kind of interesting. I guess with all of us, we tend to have no idea where the ball's going to roll, do we?
Right.
When I joined Texaco in 1982, after I got my master's degree in their central engineering department, and I was going to work chemical projects. And the first Christmas I was there, I joined in September of '82. The first Christmas, there was a project going on at the Bechtel office in coal gasification.
Coal gasification. Okay.
Alternate energy of its day. It was
back then that was a big deal.
It was, and the experienced guys didn't want to have to work over Christmas, so new guys. So they said, why don't you go into that office and work Christmas break, and then we'll come rescue you. Well, I never got rescued. I end up I followed that project all the way out, through the design and into the field, and it became the first commercial coal gasification of power plant in America, and it was out in California, in the Mojave Desert there in California, and was really a kickoff to my career. I ended up staying there to 1984, and on the operating staff, and when I came back, I was the only guy in the office who had any operating experience in that kind of business. So
okay, so that gave you a niche.
It really did, and probably a little bit of a lead on the younger folks as far as being a little bit different. So, and that's been a lesson for me all the way, is dive into everything, and you never know. I tell my kids, you never know what's going to end up standing out. It may be the thing you think is the dumbest thing may end up being the thing that everybody notices, and the stuff you think is the most important may end up being something that just goes ho hum. So you just never know. Do your best on everything.
So when you say do your best on everything, as a leader of not only an organization but of teams of people to get new things done, that how do you prepare for that? How do you make that work? Because refining, from my impression, I'm no expert there, but my impression is that it's a very well established industry, but that what you've done, and from my experience being in industries that are well established, and I've done my share of pioneering new things.
Right.
Sometimes the toughest sale is to your own company.
Yeah.
Right? Going back
that's a really insightful point, Jim. That is absolutely true, and something we're dealing with right now, because kind of the inverse of what you're saying is one of the things about working in the refining industry and the chemical industry. Yeah, you're absolutely right. There's a differentiation thing there that's very important, but maybe something that'd be a little more interesting to you is it's a very predictable business, and if you start a project, you're pretty much going to finish it, and it's going to go through logical steps, the engineers are kind of people of
predictability, boom, 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 boom. Got to have everything lined up. Yeah, I've done a lot of work with very good engineers.
And it meets with their personality. Now transitioning those same talents into this renewable business, it's much different. It's run by, most of the projects aren't big companies with a lot of cash. They're mostly developers, with sometimes private equity funded.
Okay.
And it's much less predictable, and it's much more, we have to be more creative about how we put deals together from a commercial standpoint. And the engineers are kind of feeling that, and it's not going this very logical progression the way they're used to. And it's upsetting, and it is exactly what you say. Is I've spent a lot of the last couple of weeks. We have one particular client who's coincidentally our best client, but they are moving down the road and getting more and more serious. And my gosh, this thing's looking real. And our folks, it's upsetting sometimes when the thing isn't going the way
yeah, like so it's like an oh crap moment. It's like
exactly.
So what do you do when that happens? You've got all this momentum happening and money being spent and maybe a little pressure to get the results. When that oh crap moment happens, what happens for you?
Well, that's a critical thing. And Jim, I think, you're a leader yourself. You'd be very familiar with it. It's where leadership really matters. It's not just a concept. It's not just I kind of, we have a new, I've tried to promote younger folks into
to build the bench strength and maybe a legacy aspect to it.
Yeah, there is, and that's kind of not where I thought we'd go, but the some of these younger folks that I see potential, and we send them to some leadership courses and things like that. Well, when they come back, I don't want to just forget it. I try to put them into leadership positions, and
good for you. Yeah.
And can't always do it, but I try to as much as I can. Well, you get into a situation like this, and okay, it's time now. You're in seat. It's not all, it's not all fancy title and fancy money. It's you got to lead, baby. And you got to make these guys feel good about what they're doing. And by the way, guys and women, we're probably more than 50% women, believe it or not, these days. And
I absolutely believe that. Yeah, even in the oil business, right?
Absolutely. And I will say a lot. I'm also on an advisory board at the University of Texas, where I went, and engineering there is approaching 50% female. So and
very good.
That's good, and it presents that kind of diversity is very healthy and very, very powerful. And thank goodness for them. We'd have a great shortage of engineers if it wasn't for that. But anyway, in this sort of situation where you've got to show some leadership among our own people, and like you say, they have to be sold on what we're doing, and have to understand what we're doing, and they have to listen, to something that's a little off center. And again, that's where leadership really meets the test, doesn't it? Where it's not a soft skill. It's something we really need to happen, and we need to perform.
So what do you see now as the primary leadership skill set that's needed in your industry that may or may not be getting filled through the educational system?
Yeah, that's a good one, and it really isn't, and kind of on the topic we were on, some of it is gained, and it's something I hadn't expected, Jim, coming. You mentioned I started with a big company, and now I'm running I would call it a mid-sized company. The big difference there is, in a big organization, there are plenty of mentors, and there's plenty of examples, and there's usually a very strong culture. In a smaller company, that's not always true, and you can't take it for granted that people will just pick stuff up, because often they don't. Then there's not enough of those people in mentor positions, and not nearly the often. Some of our folks are doing stuff, and they're the only one in the company doing it, and they don't have an example. They don't have somebody to learn from. So in that case, we have to be intentional, don't we, about this is who we are, this is how we act, this is how we act around a customer, this is how we act around other employees, and I read something recently on leadership that I really hit me right, was that leadership isn't about making your folks feel good about you. It's you making your folks feel good about themselves, and and in this case, I think that's very important. Is I'm doing something, to make people understand I'm doing something important. It certainly is not without its risk, but it's a risk worth taking, and we're good enough to make it work, and that's kind of what it's about, I think.
Yeah. Well, that's great. So you're investing back into, I'm sure you're hiring, the best of the best. And then I remember I did a lot of work with companies like Apple and Microsoft and Hewlett Packard back when I was doing that stuff. And
Right.
They're all different companies, but the one that sticks out for me the most was Apple. And I got to a point where I was able to get into their inner sanctum, so to speak, in the engineering side, working on the new products. I worked on the iPod the first time, and then the Xserve and the iPad and the iPhone and all those products. And I got on the inside when, the market was asking Apple, "Are you guys doing anything in this?" And they go, "Nah, we're not doing anything." I knew they were. It was kind of fun, but
Yeah.
Steve Jobs and his team that he built was amazing.
Mhm.
And he really did do, he was really tough on that group, but he pulled the best out of them.
Mhm.
And his philosophy was, and you see this in quotes, that he's done, but I actually experienced it. They would hire the best people and then leave them alone to
Right.
do, to be their best and support them with what they needed.
Right.
And it sounds like you're doing the same things.
It's a
which-
really big deal, and of course he was a tremendous leader, wasn't he? But accomplished great things. And
Tough. He's tough.
Yep, tough dude. And that's kind of what a little bit of what I was saying before. It's there's a great temptation to want to be everybody's buddy, and,
Right. Yeah.
and in fact, leadership can be kind of lonely because you
Mm.
can't be everybody's buddy, and sometimes
Right.
you gotta come down a little bit, and make sure people understand folks. But I will say about what you just said is that the flip side of that is you can't micromanage people, and because talented people don't want to be micromanaged and get frustrated, and like you say, that the goal is to hire good people and then let them work. And if they're not good enough, you shouldn't hire them in the first place. And if they
Well,
are,
yeah.
to let them alone,
Right. Yeah. But that's a tough thing to do. It's not easy because you're letting go of that. And as a leader, that's, I think, one of the most difficult things is not to micromanage in some respects.
It is. And I think that's something that you learn with experience. You and I are joking about being old guys, but it's something that you learn by experience, I think, a little bit, because it's something of an art, to let people have a little room.
Mhm.
But on the other hand, establish some boundaries, and that's kind of a tough balance sometimes, easier said than done, but something you got to do.
Yeah. So I'm going to pull up, let's kind of change gears a little bit. I'm going to pull up your website
Oh, wow. Okay.
and take a look at what's going on here. So can you see that?
I can. Yeah.
Okay, great. So this is the KP Engineering website, and it talks about what we do. And I love the picture. It's really doesn't portray a refinery.
There you go. Well,
So you're representing
sustainability.
sustainability and green and having that be associated with the oil business is like my brain's going, what? So
Yeah.
what is it? Tell me about that experience for you, and what was it that that you told us a bit about your early experience in taking on that project, and
Mhm.
it's obviously, and that was a long time ago, right? It was
Yeah,
the beginning of your career,
right,
and so that's been a theme for you now.
right. Yeah,
And
it's kind of like I say, it's not something I set out to do, but it's one of those things that's been incredible. And there's been several times over the years, Jim, when this was out of stock, and it got a little scary, doing, I will call it alternate energy or alternate fuels, or in this case now the word like you see here, sustainable. And there's been certain periods where it wasn't, and I would try to hide it, and I because sometimes I did want to be like an oil guy, but
mhm.
when this stuff was just out of style. But it's amazing. It's served me very well, and it's interesting stuff, and it's an area where you feel like you can make an impact, you know.
Well, very good. So this is tell us about this picture. What does that represent?
Yeah, that so it's an interesting contrast between those two, and we worked on this quite a bit, probably, overthought it, I imagine, but that first
As
picture.
engineers tend to do.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. Because there's an interesting kind of dichotomy with our business is there's the part that we wanted to convey in that first one of sustainability, and we wanted to show the green, and we wanted to show the path through the woods, so to speak, of we can help you understand how to get from point A to point B. So that's all the things we're trying to convey there. What can go overboard with that is you can't forget that you're dealing with people in industry. They're serious people. They're
Mhm.
trusting you with their important projects, and so you can't make it all too soft. You got to
Mhm.
come back to, but hey, this is all true, but the other side of that is we know what we're doing, and we can build stuff like this in this picture. We can make it work. We
Mhm.
won't waste your money. We won't waste your time.
So yeah, and you're doing process studies, project
And
development.
execution. Yeah, that's an interesting one there. Maybe doesn't strike your audience as, why do they have to show that stuff? We want to show that we can help you at any phase of your project.
Mhm.
These early studies are often sort of the least detailed, but they're the most impact in that you can use a less detailed model to decide what do we really want to do, and how do we optimize it, and how do we make it, economical and operable and safe. So
Sure.
these studies are very important. We don't make a lot of money on studies, but it's where we get our customers, and so they need to, it's sort of the entry point for working with us.
Sure. Yeah. Yeah, we used to do that. We do studies. I worked primarily in noise, vibration, and shock control. So
Yeah,
we
yeah,
were doing work. Initially, we were creating actual parts with prototype molds and different things. And then it got into simulations and
yeah,
dynamic modeling with, inside the computer.
right.
And that got really interesting too, because you could iterate parts and do things on the computer that, you know, before you had to do in real, with real parts. And
Right.
so now you can do a lot of what the development work with these projects, right?
Absolutely. You know our business better than you think. That's exactly right. And that, there's so much we can do these days that when I started my career would have taken weeks that we can do just in a few days, just because it's all automated and these sort of smart drawings and so forth that
Right.
we can put a lot of information in.
So and you guys have lots of information here. I wanted to show quickly some of the projects you've worked on.
Good, good.
Pull that up. So been since 2004, 260 plus jobs, 95% return business rate. That's phenomenal leadership.
Thank you, and we're really proud of that, Jim. And that's if there's one thing I wanted to accomplish, and again, who cares what I want, but this is, to me, success when we got people that say, we work with you. We didn't always agree, but in the end of the day, we want to do another project with you, and that's what it's all about for us.
Yeah, that's fantastic. So here's some of the behind the scenes stuff, behind the curtain, right?
Right. And this is what you say. These are all computer generated models. And when I started this career, we would actually build a physical plastic model.
Okay. Yeah, like the architects did in college. They make scale models.
Exactly. And you can imagine those would take months to do.
Oh, yeah.
Now these are all generated. I don't want to sound like it's easy because these guys are very talented, but you can do these three-dimensional CAD drawings, computer aided design. And
you can fly through them and expand things, go into a specific area, pull it up.
Absolutely. You can create a person and have them walk through here so where all the interferences are if you're going to hit your head on something.
Right, yeah, okay.
It's really
the safety. And then all the bills of materials and all the procurement stuff, that all gets generated pretty much at the same time too, right?
Absolutely. And as these become more detailed, you can actually use these models to just knock out this is one of those things that automation has done where you can just send these directly to a fabricator and have him generate make this pipe and make these vessels and all that right from the drawing. So
is that where Shaw comes in?
It is, and that's been one of the big attractions, I think, for them to us and vice versa, where having somebody who can actually fabricate the pipe and fabricate what we call the modules directly is a great integration.
Wow, that one looks like the naphtha splitter unit.
Yeah, and that's a big old tower, isn't it?
It reminds me of the Apollo rockets.
Yeah. Well, that's a funny thing. Actually, I happened to have been in Alabama once, believe it or not, and the fabricator was moving the one of these big towers down the river there, and had to go through a lock there for the dam, and they were watching it, and I was just sort of listening. It happened to be our project, so that's why I was there watching it. And you could hear the other people talking about, is that a rocket ship? Is that a nuclear plant? Is that, and it was just kind of fun to hear the different thoughts about what it was. But anyway, we get into some pretty impressive vessels like this.
Yeah. Oh, that's exciting. There they are.
There they go, and
put up
and lift there. When you actually lift them up and put them in place, it's a pretty exciting day. So
yeah. So is that kind of like I've been looking at, I love single malt whiskey.
Yeah.
And it's this reminds me of the still they use.
Well,
a lot smaller than this, but is it like a similar process?
It's identical, Jim. That's a great.
It is, okay.
These are separations or stills themselves. We call them distillation columns, but that's exactly what they are. They're stills to purify something or another. And in your case, it's whiskey, and in this case, it's diesel fuel.
Okay, well, they're both good.
It's the same thing. It's separating what you want from what you don't want. In there. So
very good. So. Yeah, that's awesome. That really puts the picture together of all that you're doing and are leading. And this is not trivial in terms of resources, money, time, and I'm sure you've got. Well, I'm not sure. I'd like to ask you about the regulation stuff and the government involvement has got to be a challenge from time to time.
It is. It absolutely is. And just before we leave those pictures, that people, and for a while, I guess I wondered myself, is what am I doing in this career? And, I'm a weird dude that those sort of pictures you just showed, when you imagine that they started with a conversation over lunch or a sketch on a piece of paper and then becomes a medal like that, that just gives me a charge like nothing else. So I guess I'm in the right field, but anyway.
Yeah. Well, that's
But-
really fun.
But on the government stuff, yeah, that is a big deal, Jim, and it's always a big deal, really. One thing, you know, when I was a young guy, I was told, if you've got the idea for a project and it makes economic sense, this was the oil company, it's going to happen, you know, and the kind of the message was we have the resources to. As I went through my career, that's not really true anymore. You know, the vast majority of projects in this area, in the energy area, I'll just call it broadly, is either mandated by the government or incentivized by the government or restricted by the government into leading you down a different path. So
Sure.
this whole renewable business right now is definitely driven by, you know, let's just call it, we can call it society or you can call it the government, but it's a, you know, it's a desire to make fuel a different way, you know, and that wasn't,
so you're leading that path in many ways too now.
right, exactly. And it's
so tell us about that.
Well,
Tell me
that's
about that.
interesting because it's one thing to want it and it's another thing to know how to do it, you know, and ironically, and I don't know if your basic environmentalist would catch the irony there, but the knowledge we've gained from doing the petroleum projects, it not only translates, it's necessary in understanding how to do it. Now we'll make it from soybean oil instead, or we'll make it from you know, municipal solid waste, we'll make it from garbage. Well, the knowledge we gained from doing the projects, we had a very highly qualified process licensor. We tend to deal with the companies who invent processes, but we need to execute them. And they had an idea, you know, and a process and a technology to do this renewable diesel. You showed on one of our slides. Well, okay, we looked at it and we said, you know, this is good, but this isn't how it's really done in the field. And we knew that from building hydrotreaters in refineries, you know. This is an interesting thing you got here, but it's long ago people figured out how to do this better in the oil business, and we can bring that knowledge now to the renewable business. So it's that's kind of that crossroads between, you know, sort of the desire to do these sustainable and green, but having the gravitas and the knowledge of how they really execute it and how they'll really operate and reliable.
Well, and then being able to communicate that.
Absolutely.
Right? Isn't it that, I mean, that to me, you could have the best ideas in the world, but if you can't communicate them in a way that the right people understand it, they won't take action. If they're a confused mind will not make a decision.
Right.
So I learned that in my marketing.
There you go.
Like,
there you go.
Yeah.
Well, it couldn't be more true. That's absolutely right. And
so how do you accomplish that with something brand new? And I just picture this huge ball of, you know, this energy that's out there, people doing stuff, and they're all doing stuff.
right.
You have to interrupt them and say, let's look at this. It's different. And you got to get their attention and then pull that story in so they actually kind of come around to your side of the table, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And it kind of dovetails with something we're trying to do, probably a completely different reason, but we have been a company that is talks a lot about our experience level and our we had been a company that didn't hire a lot of younger people. We did a lot of experienced people, and okay, that catches up with you, right? And so we are trying to young up a little bit, like we discussed before.
Yeah.
Well, it ties into your question in the sense that now, you have some younger folks that are all gung ho on this, and you've heard the kind of the cliche about this younger generation that doesn't want to talk about making money. They want to talk about making impact on the world. And then we got these older people kind of, the cliche would be, these cynical sort of older people that don't want to change. Well, I've actually found that not to be true at all.
Really? How
Yeah,
so?
it's interesting. I at least with our gang, and I won't generalize it to life in general, but I have found our older engineers are just crave this opportunity to mentor people and
Okay.
teach.
Uh-huh. Uh-huh.
Okay, and I'm reaching this back into my career now. What can I contribute now? And it's not all just technical. It's I can teach somebody to what I know, and feel like I can retire and leave some of what I learned behind. And it's been great. I mean, we've had in some ways, I want to get more younger people in here before we lose any more older folks, so we can do more of it. Because
Okay.
that's been the predominant reaction to it, Jim. It's been really gratifying that way.
That's awesome. That's great leadership. They're helping kind of create that bench strength and the momentum and the legacy and enabling people who want to do more
Yeah,
to do that.
it is, and it turns out, and it's almost like a coincidence, but we can bring our costs down for the customers that way and still get them the high quality because although, we're having younger folks do it, they're being taught by the experienced people. So it's
Right.
sort of leveraging the knowledge out over a less expensive base. So it's been a win-win all around that way. So
That's powerful.
yeah.
Well, Bill, our time is about up. So
Right.
it's gone by real quick. You got time for one more question?
I do, and then I want to leave you one compliment before we break up. So it's
Well, thank you, I think. But the question I ask this of everybody who comes on the show, and it's basically, over your whole career, taking a look at, and maybe before you started working too, maybe earlier, what was the boldest leadership decision that you've made?
Oh man.
And what were the consequences?
Wow. That's a tough one, Jim. My God.
Probably a lot of them.
Yeah, there are. I'll give you a real turning point.
Okay.
And when I was sort of mid-career, we had Texaco had brought my family and I up to New York, and I was working up in their headquarters up in New York. And we had young kids at the time. It was the early 90s. And I was there to do a job, a big company kind of job called an assistant to a vice president. And
Oh yeah, that was with Texaco, right?
exactly. And
yeah,
it was
I saw that in your bio.
Yeah, and it was one of these sort of big company things where they give you exposure to the executives, and like executives get exposure to you.
Uh-huh.
It's sort of a test. Is this our kind of guy?
Yeah, I remember early on, GE used to do that at Crotonville and Hudson.
They sure do, and
yeah, it's powerful.
It was, and it was thought to be one of these sort of jumping off points, and if you can pass that test, you really got something.
Yeah.
And it's an interesting thing. As I say, we had young kids. I had lost my parents relatively young, and my wife's parents were back in Houston, and we'd come back for Christmas or whatever, and we'd have the crying in the airport when everybody had to break up and go back to New York, and it was one of those deals of I could see a future, Jim. I could see I can really be an executive of a big oil company here if I play my cards right. And then it was just this crisis of, is that what I really want? like I say, I had this sense of just tearing the family apart, and it was really one of those turning point kind of things. And I just decided, if I've got a certain currency, for whatever reason, if they think I got some capability and I've got a certain currency with the company, I can use that currency different ways. I can use it to make more money. I can use it to gain some status, or I can use it to have the life I want to lead. And I decided to do C.
Okay.
And they ended up giving me a job down here in Houston. I got to start a new department basically called Global Gas and Power, which turned out to be really good. It has just sort of led to a bunch of other good things. And it was one of those kind of life benders that,
Sounds like it. Yeah. That's a big at that stage, everything new,
right,
uncertainty.
right.
You just had to go with your gut. And,
yeah, exactly.
yeah. Well, it looks like you made the right decision.
Well, we'll never know, but it's worked out great for the family. Put it that way. I have 3 great kids, and I've been married 30 years, so it's so far so good.
Awesome. Well, it's great. Thank you for sharing that. That's a great story.
And I got to share something with you because, as you say, we get older, and I try to discipline myself, Jim, that if you got something to say to somebody, say it and don't let it go, because you never know. But whenever you contacted me over the years, which have all been great, I think of one thing, and it is as clear as it could be that we for the audience there, we grew up not only age-wise together, but you lived kind of close to where I lived. You were the best looking guy and the most athletic guy, and could have just lorded that over people. And you were always nice to everybody, and really had something good to say, and never sort of pigeoned yourself with a certain kind of people. Seems like you were friends with all kinds of different people, and I just always admired that about you. So,
well, thank you. I appreciate that.
that.
That's very nice of you to say. And I am still good looking, and
You are, man.
that's right. Well, I've got my Zoom, it's like the Zoom thing that makes me look younger.
Not so.
Well, thank you, Bill. I appreciate you spending some time with me today on the show, and it was really fun. I appreciate it.
That's been fun. I appreciate it. I appreciate you having me.
We'll talk to you soon.
All right. Take care.